Today is a historic day, as for the first time in history, an all-civilian mission is currently orbiting Earth. It is also Wednesday, September 15th, which means it is DCA Wednesday.
This podcast is for information and entertainment purposes only. Nothing on this podcast should be construed as financial advice. All views expressed on this podcast are solely the opinions of the host and/or any guests that we might have from time to time. Nothing on this podcast should be construed as a specific inducement to make a particular investment or to follow a particular investing strategy.
Good evening, you sexy sat stackers, and welcome to lucky episode 13 of the Bitcoin Bulletin Podcast. Today is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021, and that means it is DCA Wednesday. As I alluded to in the opening, we're getting our stack on a little bit later this week than usual, and that is because we were fortunate enough to attend tonight's SpaceX mission, Inspiration4, which launched the first all-civilian mission into orbit aboard the Crew Dragon Resilience on a Falcon 9 rocket from Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center. But since it is such a late start, let's get right into it. Bitcoin is currently hovering at a price of approximately $48,010. That is up almost $2,000 since last DCA Wednesday. We are at a block height of 700,743, and that all-important 24-hour transaction volume is back up from this weekend to 3.27 transactions per second, although that is down slightly from 3.30 transactions per second last DCA Wednesday. If you're just joining us for the first time, we are on a mission to explore the investment strategy known as dollar cost averaging by investing $20 with a Bitcoin every Wednesday for as long as it takes until we're all either filthy stinking rich, Bitcoin goes to zero, or you guys just get bored and stop listening. Today will be our 8th stack in this adventure, with our first stack having occurred all the way back now on July 28th of this summer. So far, we've stacked 306,416 Satoshis for a total cost of $140, including a 2.25% investment fee that we've been paying each stack. And our stack is currently worth $147.11. So we've recouped our fees, and we're actually up $7.11 more than we've invested, and that is because our average cost basis has only been $45,689, which ironically is almost exactly the same as our basis last week. Bitcoin had gone all the way up to 52,000, if you remember, and then it crashed all the way down to 42,000 briefly on last Tuesday on Bitcoin Day, when El Salvador officially rolled out their Bitcoin is legal tender law and their Chivo app. It did quickly rebound to about 46,000, and then it's been kind of hovering in the 46,000 price range since that time. Although it did tick up about $2,000 in the last 24 hours, and that's where we are now. So, without further ado, let's get this thing started. And we're going to start by opening our handy dandy Cash App. As I've said before, I stack on Cash App because it's super easy. The fees are relatively low. There are services out there that are cheaper, but there's also services out there that are certainly more expensive. If you do not have Cash App, there is a referral code in the show notes, and if you use that referral code and follow their terms and conditions, you'll get $5 just for signing up, and we'll get $5 as well, which will help the podcast out a little bit. As usual, I don't keep money on my Cash App, so I'm going to add $20. And since I have a debit card link to my Cash App, that's pretty quick. So that's already in there. Then we're going to click on the Bitcoin tab, click Buy Bitcoin. And as I've mentioned before, Cash App will let you automate this, whether you want to make it a daily, a weekly, or bi-weekly purchase. But as you know, and as I've said every single episode, I prefer to manually purchase. And while it means that we're getting a late start tonight compared to normal, There's just something satisfying about entering $20 and hitting send. One thing that's interesting to notice is that $20 usually isn't a default option, but either Cash App updated or they're learning, because now I don't actually have to manually enter 20 for the first time. Just simply click on 20, click next again. It verifies with my Face ID since I'm using my phone. And then it says confirm our purchase. So while I was talking, Bitcoin actually went down a bit to $47,902.58, which is going to get us 40,812 sats with a purchase price of $19.55 after a 45-cent purchase fee. Click and confirm. And boom, just like that, we have another 40,812 sats to our stack. This being the 8th stack, we've invested a grand total of $160, which when we first got started, if you were questioning whether $20 was a significant amount, it just goes to show you how fast that adds up. Just 2 months ago, not even 2 months ago, we only had $20 of the Bitcoin in our wallet, and we're already up to more than $160 with the sats. And like I said last episode, and like I think I've said every episode, we chose $20 because that's a reasonable amount that most people around the world would be comfortable with stocking away. A lot of people, $20 isn't very much money at all. And like I always say, again, this is not investment advice. So do your own research. You do you, invest what you feel comfortable with. But again, in order for the theory of dollar cost averaging to work, you need to pick a consistent number, and you need to stick with it and invest on a regular basis, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever that you pick based on your personal preferences. We're going with Wednesday because it's easy and it keeps us on a regular schedule. And a lot of people don't have a spare $20 every day, but coming up with $20 every week shouldn't be that big a deal for most people listening to this podcast, even if it means you didn't hit the drive-thru on the way home or didn't have an extra beer after work. $20 isn't a big deal of money, isn't a whole lot of money for most Americans to try and squirrel away. And of course, if you were dollar cost averaging $1 a day or $10 a day or whatever you choose, it's the theory and the principle is still the same. So again, do your own research. As they say online all the time, never invest any money that you can't afford to lose. So you've got to come up with what you feel comfortable with. But the important thing is that you do so regularly. And if you're following us, that means that you have invested $160 already. And that $160 has scored us 347,228 Satoshis, worth $166.33. So things are looking pretty good. Of course, they say it's easy to look like a financial genius during a bull run. So we'll see how this plays out. We've yet to see how this will play out. But again, dollar cost averaging is a long-term strategy. And we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves. So in case we've lost you already, the dollar cost averaging is an investment strategy where you invest your money in equal portions at regular intervals, regardless of price. I know we kind of covered that, but usually I guess I like to explain that in more detail before we get into the purchase. And again, if I seem a little rushed, it's because I barely squeaked into the door and got all set up to do record the pod after sitting on the edge of the Banana River in Cape Canaveral, Florida to watch tonight's SpaceX launch. Now, that was a beautiful launch, by the way. If you missed it and would like to see what we saw, 4K video that I rolled is available on YouTube, on the YouTube channel Cocoa Beach 365. So that's youtube.com/Cocoa Beach 365, COCOABEACH 365, like Cocoa Beach, where I Dream a Genie took place, and 365, like 365 days in the year. So hopefully you get to both enjoy this podcast and you got to enjoy watching that historic launch tonight, which is particularly cool. And I know that At first glance, you might not think that SpaceX and rockets have a whole lot to do with Bitcoin, other than the fact that SpaceX owns a couple $1 billion of the Bitcoin. But as they say, we want to see Bitcoin go to the moon, and a lot of us mean that literally. If Bitcoin does moon one day, I would certainly be one of us to sign up for one of those commercial space flights. I mean, how cool would that be, right? And I mentioned this at least the last DCA Wednesday. At a certain point in time, we're going to come up with an amount of Bitcoin that we would not want to be keeping on an exchange. The common wisdom is never leave your Bitcoin on an exchange. Not your keys, not your Bitcoin, not your keys, not your cheese. However, one thing to consider is that when you do move your Bitcoin, it does incur a mining fee to move it. If you meet Cash App's terms and conditions, they don't actually charge a mining fee for a certain number of transactions. And that's one of the other reasons I like Cash App is even though we paid 2.25% to make the investment, it's not going to cost me anything to move that coin to my hardware wallet. So that kind of nips a little bit of that. It kind of makes up for some of those fees. So if you find a service that's maybe 1% instead of 2.25%, but it's going to charge you, a $5 mining fee to move your coins, then you're probably actually better off with Cash App paying the commission. That being said, I don't want to end up getting stuck paying 100,000 Satoshis one day to move 300,000 Satoshis. So my personal threshold is usually around 1 million sats before I'm going to feel comfortable moving it to my hardware wallet. That is a decision for you to make. One great resource is bitcoin.org. Can help you in choosing what type of wallet you might want to use. I think they have a click-through guide where you answer some questions based on what your goals and criteria are, and then it suggests some wallets for you. And we're going to get into wallets more in detail in a future and probably dedicated episode. I will definitely do so before it's time to move those sats. Another thing you may be wondering is if you listen to our episode on Bitcoin Day on Tuesday, we bought $30 worth of Bitcoin in solidarity with Bitcoiners all around the world to celebrate the $30 that each Bitcoin or each citizen of El Salvador who downloaded their Chivo wallet got. And there's also a thing called BTFD, and that is buy the dip. And if you were watching, Bitcoin certainly dipped, being at 52,000 on Tuesday and then all the way down to 42,000 on Tuesday. And I have certainly made additional purchases and bought some of those dips as well. But for the purposes of keeping our dollar cost average experiment clear and easy, I'm segregating those and not including those in our tally. For the purpose of DCA Wednesday, only the funds that we invest in DCA Wednesday are in my wallet. So I have more than 300,000 sats, but not in this particular wallet because this is our DCA wallet. And the same thing, if you were following the same investment strategy and maybe picked up some sats during the dip, or if you're buying more than $20 each DCA, then you're probably at the point where you definitely need to do some research and get those coins off an exchange. And there are many, many, many reasons why you don't want to leave your coins on an exchange, only part of which is the risk of losing your Satoshis. Many people also say that basically how the market gets manipulated is through people shorting Bitcoin, shorting derivatives, where if your coins are on the exchange loans them to people who then short that Bitcoin, and they're using your coins to manipulate the market. So if you don't want to be a part of that, that's another great reason to get your coins off an exchange. But again, for the intensive purposes of DCA Wednesday and for this experiment, we're not ready to move that 300,000 sats. That's about going to do it for this lucky 13th episode of the Bitcoin Bulletin Podcast. If I forgot to cover anything, if I got a little scatterbrained because I was in a hurry, please go ahead and let us know. You can do that by following us on Twitter at BTC Bulletin Pod, or by emailing us at bitcoinbulletin@protonmail.com. Hey, if you find this content useful or entertaining,
Or if you're just feeling extraordinarily generous, there are a number of ways you can help support me in this podcast. The most obvious one is if you don't already have Cash App, there is a referral code in the show notes. And if you click on that link and set up a new Cash App account and follow their terms and conditions, you'll get $5 just for trying them out, and we'll get $5 as well. I've written several books, but the one you might know that's most relevant to this podcast is Understanding Bitcoin for Noobs, and that's available on both Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com. Obviously, purchasing either of my books would help support the podcast as well. And you can also support the podcast directly through the Anchor.fm website, and they include a support link automatically in the show notes. And last but not least, we also include a Base32 Bitcoin address in the show notes if you feel like helping us out by contributing Bitcoin. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Bitcoin Bulletin Podcast, Dollar Cost Average Wednesday edition. Don't forget to join us next Wednesday and every Wednesday as we continue the journey. Once again, thanks for listening, and keep stacking those sats, you sexy sat stackers.